showing that Out of Africa is available for streaming. I don't know if you ever saw that. It was a great film. Nowadays, we might look at it a little more with an eye to fairness. But it was that film, great film, came from a novel written by a Danish woman at the turn of the previous century. And another wonderful film, one of my all-time favorite films, was Babette's Feast. If you haven't seen Babette's Feast, you gotta see Babette's Feast. And that was by the same author, Isaac Dinesen, and that was from a short story. But I'm not gonna talk about those movies, or the books they came from. I'm gonna talk a little bit about another book she wrote called Seven Gothic Tales. And the reason why I'm gonna talk about that one is that, first off, Isaac Dinesen, whose actual name was Baroness Blixen, was a contemporary of my great-grandmother. I think she was born in 1875, 1879. This was made by my great-grandmother, Augusta Lorenzen. This is a sampler, young ladies from somewhat better families, if there might be the possibility in the future that they might have to be a governess, they had a sampler to show that, yes, they could teach their employers' little girls how to embroider and sew. In Seven Gothic Tales, which I read, and like none of those stories, there's an odd mention in one of them that makes me think that she was talking about my family. Because she mentions how this eldest daughter of one of the good families of Denmark ran away with the coachman. And every Christmas, a carriage would arrive at her home, where she lived with the footman, and servants would deliver huge baskets of food and Christmas types of things. And the servants never said a word. They were under orders not to speak a single word, not even greet them. My great-great-grandmother or her husband, the footman who seduced the eldest daughter of his house. This was the kind of family where the eldest daughter had specific names. So my great-great-grandmother was Louise Augusta, and she named my great-grandmother Augusta Louise, and then she named my grandmother Louise Augusta, and either my cousin or I should have been named Augusta Louise, according to my grandmother, but we weren't. Now, my great-grandmother grew up seeing these packages arrive, and my great-grandmother was the one daughter. There were 7 boys. My great-great-grandmother had with the footman 7 boys and 1 daughter. And that reminded me of how I once read that if a woman really likes sex, the sex she's having, she's more apt to have a boy. So gentlemen, your mother's had a good time. Probably. But after 7 times, maybe not such a good time with number 8, which turned out to be a girl. And the girl grows up, I believe her mother died, but the footman was no good Nick, and he abused her. So she wrote to an uncle that she had who lived in America. And he agreed that he would pay for her passage from Denmark to America, and then she would work for him and his wife to pay it off. So this is what happened. She packed up a few linens and things, not too much. That piece of embroidery was one, and she sailed to America. And she arrived at Ellis Island. But when she got there was a problem. Her father was a stowaway on the ship. And he was sent back to Denmark, which was good for her, obviously. But the bad thing was, now she had to work off her passage and his round-trip passage. So she goes and lives with her uncle, and she's working for him and his wife, and working and working. And I guess she didn't see the end of this, because she got very ill. And she got so ill, they actually called the doctor. So you might, I don't know if you've put it together yet, she was basically an indentured servant. It was even illegal then, okay? This was around 1900, okay, when she'd be about between 18 and 20 years old, whenever she ran off, maybe 17, I don't know. But it was illegal to have indentured servants even then, but she was an indentured servant. Her family did that to her. Okay. But she was so ill that her uncle got a little panicky, and he called the doctor. And the doctor came, and he saw her, and he went back to her uncle and he said, "You have to let her go or she will die." And so they let her go. And she went off and made her own life. She met her future husband on the stoop of the boarding house where she was living. He happened to be living in the same boarding house, and that's how they met. And we need to think about these kinds of connections that we have, how a good history can easily turn into a bad history, and that she was lucky she was white, because if she'd been black, no doctor would have been called. Well, thank you.